Welcome to Afternoons with Tracy and Friends, the local talk show that stimulates your mind and keeps you thinking about the things going on in your world. From local issues to topics of global importance, Tracy and Friends keep you informed and keep the conversation going. Call to talk to Tracy and Friends at 347-945-5229, 330-781-9600, or toll free at 1-866-530-WSOM. Listen online at tracyandfriends.com or 600WSOM.com. And now, here's Tracy Winbush.
Well, good afternoon and welcome back. It is 6 minutes after the hour of 1 o'clock here on WSOM, AM 600 and tracyandfriends.com via Blog Talk Radio. And we want to thank Jeff for hanging in there with me and putting up with my inconsistency of never being here on Tuesdays and not being there last week. Jeff, did you behave this morning, this afternoon? Did you somewhat?
Of course not. What do you mean?
Just checking. Just checking. You know, you just want to make people accountable, don't you?
You know what?
You just want to do that.
You know what? I don't like the idea of having to take care of somebody else's kids. Nobody's helping me take care of mine.
It takes a village to raise a child. So, you just have
where's my village?
I can't help you with that.
I ain't got a village.
Listen, I have Dr. Jean Howard Hill with me, and she has written a book. She is the president of the National African American Caucus, and I found her via the internet. And I called in, I talked to her assistant, and they said that they would come on today. Hi, Jean, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I am well, and welcome to Tracy and Friends.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
I wrote in the description today because I see that you're a professor at Chattanooga, Tennessee, and if you want to tell us a little bit about you and how you became who you are, how you got to where you are right now.
Well, Tracy, I think this is an hour, and do you want 2 or 3 days?
Well, I'm on until 3, and I have been known to kidnap people, so don't feel slighted, because I will keep you.
Well, just briefly, when I first came into politics, I was a Democrat, and I decided that I was going to do that thing and become a Republican. And I've been a Republican for like 32 years, and 25 years being in leadership, heading first a Republican women's organization, and then my husband heading the men's organization, and then after his death in 91, closer to about 1999, I combined the two groups, and that's how we got the National Republican African American Caucus. And one of the things that I think that probably brought me into politics is that, first of all, it was in my DNA, and that's just sort of who I was. But just seeing the need for things to be done the right way, and when you teach, when you teach political science, American government, state and local, and international, you sort of know what the process is all about. And at some point in time, you just get really irritated when you see and you hear people who fully do not understand the process, and they begin to abuse that process. And I think that's what's going on in America right now. There is a tremendous abuse of the political process.
So you were raised, you were a Democrat when you first got started. You became a Republican. You got an education. Now, did your parents change, or did your environment change after you became a Republican, or what made you do that? Because it's not popular being Republican and being black.
Okay, Tracy, now see, you want to get into my age, but let me just make sure that your listening audience understand that I'm 39. No matter what dates I, put out there to you, I'm 39. Call me next year and I'll be 39.
I understand.
But when I got out of college, I was part of that golden 70s where we went in and we decided that we were going to go in, and I don't mean to be offensive to anyone, but we were going to get the best education. We called it the white man's education. And we were going to come out and we were going to make the money, and that we were no longer going to be poor or see our families be poor or those kind of things. So we made a pact. And all of us came out, and I think what brought me to the Republican Party was more the economic empowerment, that piece. And also, I came in at a time when I don't think that there was all that much difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, not at that time. And I've seen a tremendous moving away since that time. And so coming in, I decided that I wanted to do something that most blacks were not doing. And this was the time of Reagan, and we had a number of things that had happened in Chattanooga. with the KKK shooting a black lady on one at Martin Luther King Boulevard and other things. And so when I came in at a time when probably most blacks would not have come in. But then I think that was just sort of the dare parting part of me. But I find that within the Republican Party, there's a lot that I can identify with. And because we have gotten so far away from those 11 core values, we sometimes think that the Republican Party is all about owning a gun, immigration, and some of the other things. But when we go back and really look at the Republican Party, we can find that there's some core values that when I present the core values to African Americans, they don't have any problems identifying.
Because when I look at the Republican Party, and when I look at politics in general, I see it's very, very disproportionate. And I don't see African American advancing anywhere.
Oh,
yeah, and
you know
so
what? Yes.
My question is, politically, we act as though we're a part of the process, but actually, we're just a pawn on the table of things.
And we're not really even a part of it. I don't think we're really a part of it. Yes, we have some elected, leaders, that kind of thing. And the Republican Party, we may have a fly in a bowl of buttermilk every now and then. But we're not really a part, because when you're a part of it, you're the one that's setting policy. You're the one that's in a position to drive legislation. And we have not arrived at that point yet.
Why?
And first of all, because I don't believe that we understand who we are. Years ago, when we were 6.5 million coming up out of slavery, we are the reasons why there were Jim Crow laws. It wasn't so much because, there was racial hatred, but it was the fear that we would become the congresspersons, the mayors, and we did do some of that after Reconstruction. And so I think what is going on now is that African Americans, it seems like to me, they have either forgotten when we came from, they've forgotten the struggle, because, when I look and see in some places, you got as low as 8% voting in an election, and this is the same right that some died for, became lynched, castrated, and all that, and we're not handing that story down. And I think that that's a problem, first of all. And second, I don't really think that we understand that we have power, and that when we vote as a voting bloc or even as an individual, we're exercising that power.
You teach political science, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm looking at this upcoming election, and I'm looking at the 2008 election, and I'm looking at the voting bloc that we have. I looked at the 2010 election, and I watched what they call the Tea Party, and how much power that they actually wield inside of the Republican Party, or on the conservative side. I look at the Congressional Black Caucus over on the Democrat side that's been there for a very, very long time. And even though I don't necessarily agree with all of what they have to say and their policy making, I don't see where they have any respect and or power inside of their party to get anything done. So when the agenda comes forth, even though they have the voting bloc, they can't move any legislation, as you said. But why is it that we will not become an independent thinker and actually begin to move our community forward, no matter where and who is in power, so that we can get what needs to be done for the people who look like us and represent us?
Well, that's a problem, because we have become so party-oriented that in order to be black, you have to be a Democrat. And really, African-American Republicans are frowned upon. Now, to a certain extent, I can understand why, to a certain extent. Remember, I've been in this for 32 years, and I've seen some things among African-American Republicans I don't like. And there's a crab mentality even among us. But
good one.
I mean, it's a crab mentality. I have seen people who will cut your throat just for a crumb, because that's about all you're going to get out of the Republican Party, because there's not enough of us to either influence. So, so when you get something, you're getting a crumb. And I've seen some really mean things, and I'm speaking to my party. And I mean, we become sadistic in our crumb grabbling, because we don't get anything as you're right. And
we don't want anyone to get advanced. We don't want anyone getting any glory.
But we will do anything, and we will say anything, and we will go along with anything just to be able to get the crumbs. And that's the reason why, really, I started the National Republican African American Caucus, because I was tired of seeing African Americans just selling out, no longer believing that there were any social issues, no longer believing this, and just saying stuff that, and I'm saying, this is crazy. Let's deal with reality. I'm a Republican, but when stuff ain't right in the Republican Party, I'm going to be the first to say something.
So how in the world, and I agree with you, and I sit in the same seat that you sit in, and as I'm looking at this upcoming election, and I'm looking at, we are so pro-black on the other side that they have marginalized their future leaders, such as Tavis Smiley, because he said something about the president that they didn't like.
Yeah.
And we're watching people get their hands slapped because if you say anything that is truth, and if anything that has to do with policy that's going to motivate you upward, we're going to kill you.
You can't speak truth. And that's the problem. And I believe in truth. You know what? If it's about me, say it, if it's true. And hopefully I can get better. But that's what I'm finding in politics. We will ignore facts just to be partisan. And that's wrong. It's killing America. And I for the first time in my life, I look at the two-party system, and I'm saying it's destructive. Where we've gotten now with the two-party system, basically we have taken the basic rights, individual rights from citizens, and now it is a partisan political party-controlled government. And I know even people who have gone and said, and they've said, I wanted to vote against it, but if I did, my head would have been on the chopping board. And to me, I'd rather have my head on a chopping board and stand for truth than to compromise who I am. And I'm seeing that happen. I'm seeing that happen on both sides of the party. It doesn't matter. And if you go on the Internet, sometimes I don't venture outside of my profile page on Facebook. Because you can't unless you're going to go insane. You will actually go post office. Because you see some of the stuff and you're seeing it coming from different flavors because, I don't see people as Republicans or Democrats or Independents. I see people as friends. So my Facebook page is full of everybody.
And mine is also.
Yeah, when you see the crazy, and I have to even say to people, you know what, it's like, why do you have Democratic whatever on your, it's like, that's my business. That's not your business, that's mine. And so we've gotten to the point where politics is even dividing church people,
We won't tell the truth on either side. I go to a charismatic Pentecostal church, and I know we stand for holiness all day long until we go to the voting booth. And then when we go to the voting booth, we don't move the agenda politically to make sure they do what we want them to do.
That's right.
I don't understand that.
But it's a bought out, sold out thing too. It's long as and it's sad because I've really hurt for this. And I know that we're not the only ones as a race that are guilty of this, but I'm so tired of people getting their palms greased for you to be quiet or for you to speak out on something. And it just has to be, the basics have to be right and wrong. And when you have a spiritual base, that spiritual person inside of you ought to be so strong that it says that regardless of who stands with me, I got to stand for what's right.
So why is it that we don't do it? Look, we live, I don't know about in Tennessee, but here we got black kids dying every day, like it's a business.
Absolutely.
And I don't see anyone upset. We preach all day long. We're here on the air. We got more churches than we have anything else in our community. We own absolutely nothing. We have $1 trillion in spending, and we know how to call on God to take up an offering, but we don't know how to go out into the streets and get anything done, and we still don't know how to play within the system that we have been given.
Tracy, you're exactly right. Let me tell you something. I truly believe that God is holding in 2012 the church accountable, and particularly the black church, because there is no reason why we should have kids killing each other, kids having kids, and all these other things if the church would do its role. And that's the problem. That's problematic. And I never thought that I would live to see a day when Spirit-filled people, Pentecostal people, would be just as much a part of the wrong as other people. I'm going to be dishonest with you. And but until we clean up what we messed up, then these kids are not going to get straightened out. Because my daughter and I, who is a Harvard grad, we have been working on a study from 2007 on, and it was a youth out of crisis study. And some of the statistics that have come out, it pointed the finger at two places: breakdown in the family and the church. No spiritual basis. And these kids cannot define right from wrong. And you'd be surprised when you talk to them, and they will tell you, there's nothing wrong with that. And you say, you don't see anything wrong with that? You don't see anything wrong with driving by and popping somebody? No. If they mess with my cousin or if they mess with this person, yes. And the church has not become actively involved. We've been so absorbed with this kingship and with the money thing and the membership thing, we've become overwhelmed. And tax exemption also has caused some problems. Because people don't want to lose their tax exemption status.
But that's what I mean. We know that this was changed in 1960, I believe.
Yes.
So we know that, church and state has absolutely nothing to do with the tax code.
Yes.
So tell me, if we have such a big voting block, and we do, we swing elections, whether we know that we do or not.
Yes, we do.
We swung Obama outside of Hillary Clinton in 2008. We did that.
Yes.
We don't even understand what we did. We don't even understand how quiet the power that we have. And the people that do know, they get in so much trouble that when they do get in power, they shut them up.
But that's the problem. That's a problem when you can be shut up. That's a problem. But again, I say, Tracy, in 2012, we're seeing something on the horizon. I believe that there's going to be a political revival in America.
The number is 347-945-5229. Jeff, your mic is hot, and so South Carolina, your mic is hot also. You can jump into the conversation as we do this. You have written a book called Black Eyes Shut, White Lips Sealed. Tell us a little bit about it before anyone calls in so we can get because I didn't get a copy of it.
Well, I'll send you a copy of it. Black Eyes Shut, White Lips Sealed basically is a book that deals with both the black dilemma and the white dilemma within the Republican. It tells my story and the story of a number of African-American Republicans who have been in the party and have seen racism, and not only racism, but a form of exclusion, but for those of whom are tokens. And this doesn't put all Republicans, white Republicans, in the same boat, but this is a story that is well-founded, and it talks about that. It talks about what the Republican Party needs to do in terms of going back and reaching out, and not only just allowing us to be at the table to eat and to show up, but also to be a part of that policy-making, decision-making element. And it also talks about African Americans understanding their history, where we came from, and that what the Republican Party meant to us at a time when we needed it the most, and how that change came about, how that shift came about. And then there's a section in there that talks about African Americans facing their own demons. Because no matter how much freedom we get, until we exercise that freedom and take it to the max, we can be free, but still impoverished. And that's what's happening. We can be free and still be ignorant. And so I go back in slavery, and I bring to life some of those people who could not read and were killed because or maimed because of the fact that they wanted to read and they got caught reading. I talk about the voices of the graves coming up from slavery to tell their stories in hopes that this younger generation will see that and will understand the price that was paid. Because, like I said, if we don't hand it down, they don't understand the price that was paid for what we have now. And because of it, you know what? That's why we don't get out to the polls. Because we don't realize that somebody had a hose turned on them. Somebody had dogs turned on them. Somebody got castrated. Somebody got lynched. And, and I have a history of in my family of having been lynched. And I'm an infant of the civil rights movement. And so, therefore, I understand it from a totally different perspective. So that's basically, and it's also a prophetic book. It's a spiritual book as well, because it talks about the destiny of both the Republican Party, America, African Americans, and what we need to do to move this nation forward so that it can fulfill its purpose.
267, your mic is hot. You have a question, comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. I live in a northeastern city where you have a large number of African Americans. The problem with African Americans today in terms of politics is they don't have any economic footing in a lot of these communities, and they're being replaced in the professional class by the Asian population, which is growing in the Northeast and around the country, and in the working class population, they're being kind of replaced by the Hispanic population. So eventually they're going to get to a point where they may have politicians, but they're not going to have a viable type of voting bloc.
But the problem that I see with what you just said is I understand the money versus the numbers. And you need to have money in the political game. But when you have the numbers that we have, money is really doesn't mean anything. The problem is, as James just said, we don't know how to work together as a cohesive unit because we are crabs in a basket on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, but also I don't think that our numbers are as great as you may think. I currently live in the Northeast. The current city I live in is going through a process where a lot of the older black neighborhoods are being taken over.
Yeah.
By people who are real estate developers, and they're moving upper income Caucasians into these neighborhoods. One of the reasons why they're able to do it is because the black population has kind of diminished so much over time.
Well,
and so because you have so many blacks who are incarcerated, or blacks who have died from HIV, or blacks who have died from homicide, the black population in a lot of the cities the black population has gone down.
But I still beg the difference because when I look at hold on, South Carolina, when I look at Detroit, Michigan, even when you have 80% African American in a city, you still have no black power in your economic system and what you're doing. And just because you have a black face on your mayor does not mean you have black power when it comes to how your city is governed.
Right.
One of the things that I think has happened is that black people, after somewhere around about the 70s, we changed. And we used to have, some people can say segregation was really, 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 really bad. I'm not going to ever say go back to segregation. But when we were segregated, we had our own towns. So we had our town doctor, our town dentist, our town store, our town barber. You owned. You were owners. You were entrepreneurs. And I'm finding now that we don't have that anymore. So we're losing that small business economic base.
Go ahead, South Carolina. Yeah.
One of the things that I was going to comment while he was saying that was, is this. There, we can see the population drop. And
yeah.
we have to, we try to rationalize it in our mind. Well, they're killing us off. Our population is dwindling. Our population is getting smaller. Our voting block is getting smaller. But the thing that's not being said in the public arena is given the answer of why our population is diminishing.
Yes.
I've given that figure 0.7 for every one that dies. That's 0.7 being born for every one that dies. In other demographics, other ethnic groups, that ratio is double that. At the very least, it's double that. And in some of them, it's 4 times as many. And in one particular, it's 7 times as many. But we don't want to address the issue of why our population has diminished. And that is the one thing that decimates us more than anything else, and that's abortion.
But look at the polling. That goes back to our politics again.
When we talk about the abortion issue, you know what? Whites abort too, but they're doing it privately. And unfortunately, when some of the blacks, when they have to abort, is coming through some of the Planned Parenthoods and that kind of thing. But we also have to take in consideration there's homicides. I mean, we're killing each other, and whether we are diminishing or not, I still maintain this. Whatever we have, why aren't we voting? And why aren't we using what we have? And so a lot of times we look at statistics and we give reason. And I agree with you. The statistics are out there. But I think sometimes we use those numbers to explain, and then we forget that, but what about who you do have and what you do have? And we got to learn to start making use of what we got. If you only got 20% in your town, South Carolina, then make sure that 20% is out there voting. Because that 20% still can be a 20% solid voting block that they can depend upon. And you can say, hey, look, based upon this, these are some of the things that we sit down at the table we want to see happen.
Well, that's no problem. That's no problem with that. With trying to mobilize the 20% or whomever's out there. The problem is they're mobilized and they've been quote unquote brainwashed to do the opposite of what's good for them.
And not only that, they're undereducated when it comes to how their vote works. This is something that I got into a lot of trouble with last election cycle. I have a problem with all of the talking heads and the surrogates that come in and want people to get out to vote but don't want to educate people on the voting process or who they're voting for.
I'm with you on that one.
See,
and you shouldn't educate based upon party. You should educate based upon all of the candidates and let that individual choose whether or not they want to vote as a Republican or Democrat or who they want to choose in the process. Because if you education, being an educator, it means put it all out there and let people do the choosing themselves. But what I'm finding is that when people come in and call themselves educating, it's basically trying to push one candidate down your throat and dog the other. But, you know, you have to look at both pro and cons of all of the candidates and then leave that person to will themselves as to who they want to vote.
And that's the problem that we have in our community. Even those that know, they don't educate people on the issues. They don't tell them why these things are happening. They don't give them the facts. They give them what they want them to do, and then people follow that.
Yes, as if it's gospel, most of the time it's not facts. They're not facts. I have heard some things, and being a researcher myself, and also a research consultant, I've heard some things, and I've had to scratch my head and ask, where did you get that from? Because when you're giving erroneous facts, then that's not helping. And people will rely upon that as if it is the gospel to our detriment.
Listen, I've got to take a break. I'm going to be right back. I am talking with Dr. Jean Howard Hill, and she is the author of, now you want me to promote your book? Where do you want me to go with this? Who are you? She's an educator. She is an advocate. She is a spokesperson.
Whatever.
She's plenty smart. That's what's going on, and I'm loving this conversation. You haven't heard me open my mouth yet.
WSOM. 945-5229. We'll be right back. Well, we're back, and you're listening to Tracy and Friends. It's 37 minutes after the hour of 1 o'clock here on WSOM AM 600 and TracyandFriends.com via Blog Talk Radio. In the studio with Jeff. South Carolina is on the phone with us. And we have Dr. Jean Howard Hill, and she is an author. She is a professor. She is an advocate. She has an agency that promotes African American Republicans, and I am, really very, very impressed with her conversation because it's so very, very true. And we want to hear from you. This is open dialogue, so we go and we bring everybody in and we leave everybody up as long as you can. And the number is 347-945-5229. And if you want to call here locally, you can. That number is 330-781-9600. Dr. Hill.
Yes.
Where do we go from here when we look at this upcoming election and you can't tell the truth about anything?
We start telling the truth. That's where we go. There's no place to go but truth. And we have to start. I've always been known as the person who would, when nobody else would say it, they would say, tell her, she'll do it. Because, it's sort of like Mikey will eat it. But because I've never had a problem with telling the truth, because when I tell the truth, I can sleep at night. And there's a way to tell the truth. I mean, you don't have to be mean and ugly. That's another thing, too. We've got to return to some form of civility within politics. It is just so mean and ugly out there. You don't have to disagree and be ugly with each other. You can make your point. But you can tell truth, and you can speak truth even with love and compassion and with the right temperament. I mean, we don't have to take off our earrings and, take a stiletto off, the left stiletto off, in order to speak truth. And I don't see us going any place other than truth. If we want to rescue America from the place where she is right now, truth has got to come forth. Truth and wisdom.
Well, I've understood
and I may add to that courage.
Well, one of the things I'm running into is truth seems to be relative to your political affiliation. And that's the problem I'm running into. My
That's
truth
not true.
is what I'm saying that I know. No, what I'm saying is
I know
With
what
the
you're
people
saying.
that are,
People
yeah,
find their
yeah.
own brands of truth. I understand exactly what you're saying. But until we get to the point where we're saying it is what it is, and, if it's ugly on my side, then it's just ugly. So I can either paint the fence and make it look better, or I can leave it ugly. And some things, depending upon how you look at it, you can see things from different perspectives because, that's a part of political socialization. Your background and all those other things come to play in how you look at issues. But when you're talking about facts and you're talking about truth is just truth. But I agree with you, brother.
Now,
it's different forms.
You said something, and I've got to ask you. You said, you've seen racism within the party, within both parties, within the Republican Party also. You've seen to where it is not equalized. You've seen some things, and you felt some things, and if you've been around, you know some things. But why do you stay? Why did you stay? I mean, because they tell people that you're a sellout if you stay.
Well, I stayed because, first of all, I'm one of those people that I guess I'm just a stubborn, hard-headed woman. And when you tell me I'm not supposed to be someplace, I'm going to be there simply because, I'm an American citizen, first of all. I'm African-American after that, but I'm an American citizen. Nobody tells me whether or not I can be a Democrat or a Republican. I am what I want to be, and I will to be what I want to be. And so, therefore, I stayed for a number of reasons. I stayed because it's the party I align with. I may not agree with everything, particularly now on some of the issues and the way we're embracing them, but the basic fundamental ideology of the party I agree with. And I also stayed because this is where I'm supposed to be, and I don't do anything without prayerfully considering it. And it has to line up with my divine purpose. And my purpose was to be a Republican. And so, therefore, if I am a Republican, simply because this is where I'm going to fulfill my divine calling and my divine purpose. And I've seen that, and I've seen, I've had some headaches and I've had some things happen, but I see difference. And it's just now beginning to show now when people can come and say, hey, look, I remember some years ago when you stood up for this, and I tell you, I really respected you for that. And I'm wondering, where were you? I didn't see you respecting me. I saw a whole world seemingly against me. And so you stay until you make a difference. And if you want a difference, you've got to stay there. You've got to show people that you're not going anywhere and that you're going to be consistent and that you're not going to change and that right is still right 10 years later and that you're going to do what's right. And so I've stayed because I feel that there's also has to be some equality within each party. And you got to have us on both sides. And when people say, I've heard Republicans say, there's no way that I could be a Christian and be a Democrat. And that's like bull, I would never go that far. And that's wrong. You can't tell a person that they can't be a Christian and be a Democrat. And just like you can't tell a person that in order to be a Republican, you got to be a Christian. It's about politics. And so, I stayed, and I plan to stay. And, nobody can put me out of the Republican Party. I think they know that now. And then if they know it, there's a respect. So, that's basically my story. Other people have different reasons why they're in it. Unfortunately, there are some of us that are in it because we think that it's going to promote us and get us where we need to be. And some of us like being that only fly in the bowl of buttermilk because it means that the goodies are going to come to us, and so therefore we do all the other things against everybody else to keep people from coming into the Republican Party. That I found out. And it's really just disheartening. It really is. When you're talking about recruiting African-American Republicans, and you find that the ones that are fighting the most are your brothers and your sisters, Republican, African-American people.
We're talking to Dr. Jean Howard Hill, and she's an author of Eyes Wide Shut, White Lips Sealed, and she's a national chair of the...
I'm laughing. Black Eyes Shut, White Lips Sealed. It was close. It's close enough.
Did I reverse that?
Yeah, you
I'm good at it.
The eyes and the ears, but it's okay. It's close.
So again, it is Black Eyes Shut, White Lips Sealed, and she's also the national chair of the National Republican African American Caucus. And now, do you think that African Americans should become Republican, or do you think that they should just become independent thinkers?
I think they should be independent thinkers, and wherever that leads them, whether it's to the Democratic Party, Republican Party, or in between. That's where you are, and that's the beauty. See, when you have taught government, American government, you understand that people have a basic right to be whatever they want to be, and so I respect that. I will always have respect for that, because I don't want to live in a country where somebody tells me I've got to be a Democrat, I've got to be a Republican, I've got to be an independent. I want to be able to say, as an American citizen, I'm free. I'm free to think, and I'm free to choose. And constitutionally, I have that right of choice.
So what do we do? Because right now, the political stand that African Americans have in this country is going to be our demise.
Yeah.
And the political stand that the white Americans have in this country is going to be to America's demise. And if America goes down, I don't know where black people land.
You know what we've got to do? Now I'm going to change the conversation totally.
Go ahead.
We've got to get back to God. And if we say that this is the country, in God we trust, and I know a lot of people don't want to talk the God thing, but I beg to differ. And I think that it's time for us to fall on our knees as individuals and say, God, help me to make America better. And if I'm doing something that is causing America's demise, show it to me. Help me to get it right. And if each
How long do I have you on?
15 more minutes today.
Is that all?
How long have we been on?
No, how long do we have? How long can you stay? Because you just went somewhere else.
And
where you? Because where you went. My question is, how can we get back to God when we don't want God in our own country?
It has to be individual. See, we keep trying to do it collectively. You know, this thing is, your relationship, it's not religion, it's relational. You get right with God, and you will impact somebody else. And you may say, well, I'm the only one who's going. You just get right. Don't worry about somebody else. You do the right thing. You speak the right thing. You treat people right. You want a government that's doing the right thing. And believe it or not, if you can, it's just like a raindrop. And one raindrop by itself probably, you say, well, it's not going to make any difference. But if you get a whole lot of raindrops coming down at the same time in the same location, you can cause it to flood. But we're not talking that anymore. And even those of us who talk about God and country, we're not talking about that. We're trying to tell you that God's doctrine is this or God's doctrine is that. But what's your relational responsibility as one who walks with God or one who believes in God? And it's time to do this thing individually. And right now, 2012, I'm not concerned about what you do. I'm concerned about whether or not I'm doing what's right. And whether or not in me doing what's right, I'm speaking truth and I'm doing my best to put it out there so maybe somebody else can be influenced. And I'm seeing it's working. It's working. I was in a conversation with someone and they were really, really dogging President Obama. And I corrected them. I said, hold up. I'm Republican. I said, but I pray for him. And I said, now, you can talk about his policy with me. You can talk about some of the failed things. But now when you go personal, you go against what I believe, and that is that it is my responsibility to lift him up in prayer.
And the Bible tells us that. The Bible tells us to pray for our leadership, whether you like it or not.
Yes, and I said, so I don't want to hear it, and I'm not going to go there with you. And when I did that, the conversation changed in the group, and you know what they said? You're right, and I'm glad you brought me back to that, because you're absolutely right, and I should have known better. And I said, so you don't have to, you don't have to like him, but you are responsible for praying for him. So if he fails, you need to turn the finger back around and say, could I have prayed him into the right place? Is there something I could have done to influence him? Look at all the preachers, black preachers that go into the White House. Tell me how many of them actually will sit down with the president and say, President Obama, you know what, I've been praying for you. I turned down my plate. I fasted. I prayed for you. And this is what God gave me to give you. You're not going to find it, and if you do, it's very few. They're in there for the prestige. I went to the White House. So what? What is your influence? And we need to influence those around us, not through rhetoric, but by us doing what's right. And if I can't do anything else, I can do that. And if more people would begin to do that, we would see some changes in America.
Hey, the number is 347-945-5229. And I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly But I also believe that faith without works is dead.
That's the works.
And
when you do it, when you get involved, and you're actively involved in the process the way that they're supposed to, and people will see that there's a difference. That's works.
Because I actually say, because even when I go to vote, and I can pray for President Obama, and I do, and I believe in it, and I can pray for our country and our kids. And as an activist, I have to speak out. You know, I have to work.
But when you speak out, you will speak out doing it in such a way that people will listen to you rather than being repulsed from you. Because when you speak out and you're arrogant and you think you're the only one that has the right answer, people don't want to hear that. But when you can humble, there is a scripture about a poor man that lived in this city. And there was a lot of things that were going on. And that poor man came forth and he saved the city. And he didn't save it because he was jumping up and down, arguing with people, but he gave wise counsel. And that's what we're missing in America, wise counsel. And so, yes, there has to be works, and you have to be actively involved in this. But when you're actively involved, you have to follow some guidelines by which people can look and say, hey, there's a difference in you. So you know what? I can listen to you. I can follow you because I'm down with what you're down with.
South Carolina?
Dr. Hill, one of the things that I do know is this. You know, there's an old saying that says you get more flies than 100 than you do vinegar. But sometimes there are those cases where you have to really get someone's attention in order to change them. Because the honey is just the pacifier to them. Now, I made a comment earlier about, people, taking their own way, and you saying something about it, or me saying something about it. Now, I understand what you're saying, but sometimes it takes a little more.
No, you don't understand what I'm saying. Let me tell you why you don't understand what I'm saying. Because I think you guys are thinking that I'm saying be passive. And you evidently, you don't know Gene Howard Hill. I'm just saying, if you got to go in and turn the tables over, you got to. But there's a time also to pick up the ear and put it back on the soldier. So you got to know balance, time and season, when to do what. And no matter what you do, even if you turn over the tables and go in as a rebel, you got to do it with respect and with wisdom. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying no, by no means, because I ruffle feathers all the time. But I do it in such a way that when I'm finished with that, you know what I'll do? I'll call that person and say, hey, I love you. Want to go eat? Because I did that simply because I wanted to make things better, but I'm not mad at you. And I'm not angry with you. And I'm not taking that thing to bed with me. And when I see you, I'm not hating you. And that's the difference. We have come to a point where we hate people. I just read something, it was just horrible. We hate people. Just because they disagree, we hate them. And to me, that's not the way. That's not the way. So that's what I'm talking. So, brother, no, I don't mean that. And you're exactly right. Honey, you use honey sometimes, and you use vinegar too. So, you can get some flies with vinegar too, and fly spray. So, you do what you got to do. But the way in which you do it, at the end of the day, people will look and say, I respect you. You may have swatted me, but I respect you.
It says we're to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Yes. And if because you were talking about the call to the people, I put out a call yesterday to the people, and last week, Christians. I asked them, somebody call me and tell me how you justify voting for candidates that stand in the face of God, that say they're going to do something that God hates. How do you justify your vote? No one called, to counter me, which is a thing, because I'm seeing when you're talking about how the black community is going to pay, they're going to, for that disingenuousness, they're going to pay a heavy price in the next 2 years. And that's whether Barack Obama gets back in or not. It doesn't matter. They still support the people that support the Planned Parenthoods that were put there to get rid of you. They still support the people that support the programs that promote people not to have to work, and they can have any lifestyle they want, and they can just do what they want. And the government, if that's okay, the government will take care of you. And they support these things. And don't realize they're driving themselves back into being the low-cost labor force in America. In other words, they're going to be freed slaves. That's what they are.
Well, brother, let me just tell you this. I believe in personal responsibility. And you can lay it at the government's feet all you want. But until we start doing what we need to do as individuals and as parents and take some responsibility for ourselves, and the church take the responsibility it's supposed to take for being the foundation, we can forget all this other stuff. And brothers need to take some responsibility, too, for these babies. Because last time I checked, it was a penis that caused a woman to get pregnant. So if you want to stop abortion, let me tell you, simple solution to stopping abortion. Be responsible for your own head, both of them. And make sure that you protect that woman. And if you do that, we wouldn't have any abortions because there would be no pregnancies. And so, brothers, when I hear brothers talking about abortion, it's like, back up a minute. Because black women are being pressured. They're out there. They don't have that many men as it is. And some of them feel like that a piece of man is better than none. And that piece of man leaves a piece. After he gets a piece, he leaves a piece. And these brothers are the first to jump up and talk about abortion. But if you kept Jack in the box, there wouldn't be any babies. So keep Jack in the box. And that bothers me. Because it's always on the woman. But what with that woman is rape.
Hold on, Sal. Hold on, South Carolina. Wait a minute, because I got another call I got to pull up. 267, you're on the air.
I got 5 more minutes, and then I have to get to a meeting. So I know I stirred up something, but I meant to, because I want my brothers to understand that if you need to be sensitive to women, that you're getting pregnant and leaving with that bag, and then you're trying to tell her what she should or should not do. You don't know the trauma that a woman goes through. You don't know what it feels like to be molested. You don't know what it feels like to be raped. You don't know what it feels like to have 4 and 5 year-old kids, and then the doctor tells you that if you have this baby, it's going to threaten your life. So, you know what? Have some compassion up in here. Because, after all, if it wasn't for y'all using your 2 heads in the wrong way, it wouldn't be a pregnancy issue from the get-go.
267, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in a lot of the East Coast cities, the Democratic Party has been in power for decades. And we talk about places like Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C. The Democrats have had the mayor there for like at least 4 decades now. And yet these cities have deteriorated over time. So evidently there's something in the democratic process that's not working for African Americans. What has also happened in the inner cities is that the small business component has been taken over by Asian people and by Hispanics. And because their population is growing and the African American population is at 0 population growth according to the census taken in 2010, African Americans need to look at other options. Now, granted, the Republican Party does not reach out to African Americans, but the Republican Party does not reach out to Asians or Hispanics. But I would say Asians and Hispanics probably agree with more of the Republican Party platform. And
well, they don't have to reach out.
African American groups
they don't
also
have to reach
agree
out
as
to
well.
any of us. That's the thing. They don't have to. And until we put them in a position where they have to, they won't.
Hey, listen, I want to thank Dr. Howard Hill. Will you come back and hang out with us again?
Hey, anytime. I like hanging.
Listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate your comments and your thoughts. And if you want to find her, tell us where people can contact you on the web.
You can go to Black Olive Branch. That's my blog. You can go to the National Republican African American Caucus, or you can just Google me.
And if you Google it, you will find her. Thank you so much. Listen, I got to take a break. Guys who are on the phone, you guys can stay in there for a minute. I've got to go to my break. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you, Dr. Howard Hill. God bless you, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you for having me.